بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Inshallah, today we take our final station in this blessed book. There's one more station after it. However, we're not going to go over it simply because it begins to really divert from what is clearly part of Quran and Sunnah. And so there's no need to go over things that are either unnecessary or not fruitful in our pursuit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we take the final station of this book, and that is the station of Shawq, the station of longing. And Shawq, as the word, maybe longing is a good word, simply means that you miss something and you want to be with that thing. So it's not simply I miss so-and-so, but rather I long, as they say, I long to be with so-and-so. And how those two differ, inshallah, we'll get to in just a moment. Now, Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayh begins this station with the verse, مَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ أَجْرَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ. He begins with this verse that translates as whoever is hopeful in their meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or for their meeting with Allah, then indeed that meeting is soon. It's coming. Right? That meeting is coming. So Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayh, the reason why he references this verse is because the raja portion here, this hopefulness of being or meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that really is the longing aspect. I am longing my meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِنَّ أَجْرَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ. Then indeed the meeting with Allah is coming. And in a phrase in Arabic, in an Arabic phrase, it says كُلُّ آتٍ فَهُوَ قَرِيب. كُلُّ آتٍ قَرِيب. Everything that is approaching is near. Meaning something that is impending, something that is going to happen, then no matter how long it takes to happen, it's still near. It's near to you. Why? Because, well, time is quick. Time is quick. And, our past is like a dream to us. You think about your past, it went by so quickly, and it feels more like a dream than it does reality. Remember when you were a young child, or in your teenage years, and you were aspiring towards things. It might be aspiring towards having children, aspiring towards completing your degree, aspiring towards X, Y, or Z. Now look at where you are. Not only did you reach that point, or that point has come to pass, decades have passed since. And so everything that is near, everything that is coming, that is pending, is near. And so what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the things He's teaching us in this verse, مَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ أَجْرَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ, is the importance of this longing aspect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, longing Allah, longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it specifies what exactly we're longing for, and that is our meeting with Allah on the Day of Judgment. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reassures us that that time is coming. And because it's coming, it means it's near. Now, this verse is in the beginning of Surah Al-Ankabut, 29th chapter, and the theme of the 29th chapter is hardship in life, tests in life. And so it's also important to understand this verse in the broader context of the surah. When a person goes through hardship, one of the most reassuring parts, one of the things that most reassures them and gives them energy and commitment and resolve and resilience to get through their difficulty, is contemplating and reflecting on their meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when we engage our hardships and our difficulties through that angle, the angle of I will soon meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it does two things for us. One, it gives us that ambition and that resolve and resilience, that it is worthy for me to get through this test. It's worthy of me to be patient with this test. How many people go through a difficulty and they decide to just leave? I'm not going to continue. How many people enter med school and they say, it's too stressful, I can't continue? Or how many people enter into management and they get a higher position in their company and then they say, you know what, this is just too much stress, I can't take it, I don't want to. Or someone who says, you know what, I don't ascend the corporate ladder simply because I don't want more responsibility on my shoulders, too stressful, I'm okay where I'm at. These people, they're lacking an amount of ambition. Whereas here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when you go through a test, remember that you will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore, be patient with it, and also stay on the straight path as you go through that hardship. Because when we go through a difficulty, it becomes more and more attractive for us to do that which is haram. And so, for example, if someone is going through financial difficulty, they might consider gambling, for example. Well, this is an easy way out. Or they might consider taking a forbidden loan. And so when we remember the meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it keeps us committed. The second way this verse helps us get through our difficulties is that it instills within us this purpose behind the test. That I am being tested here and I am getting reward for what I am going through, for my endurance and my resilience and my resolve. I'm getting reward for it. And when they start thinking about how they will enjoy those good deeds that came as a result of their patience as they were being tested, it really brings an amount of patience to the person. It reinforces their patience, but it also brings an amount of pleasure. When a person's going through a difficulty and they sit there thinking, I am getting reward for this. I'm getting reward for being patient with this. And I will enjoy that reward for eternity. I'm imagining myself right now in paradise, enjoying the reward, the hasanat that I gained, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me because of this hardship, because of this test. So it really gives this element of happiness, despite a person going through difficulty. Also, there's actually a third thing here, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِنَّ أَجْرَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ, this meeting with Allah is near. One of the most important aspects of getting through a difficulty is acknowledging its temporary nature. That what I am going through now is temporary. And that doesn't mean it'll be resolved within a week or within a month. It might take years, but nonetheless, it is temporary. And even if it lasts, for example, several years, those several years will pass and things will change. Look at the test of Yusuf alayhi salam when he was falsely imprisoned. He was imprisoned, tafsirs will say, commentators of the Quran will say about 7 years or so. But those 7 years passed. Not only did those 7 years pass, decades passed afterwards. Not only did those decades pass, centuries upon centuries have passed ever since. They say that Ibrahim alayhi salam was around 1300 BC. You're talking about 3,300 years ago. Yusuf alayhi salam is a few decades afterwards. So not only did the 7 years of Yusuf's test of being in prison pass, over nearly 3,300 years have passed ever since. And so when we remember the passing of time and the finality of time, it really helps to downplay the difficulties that we're going through, not in a sense that we become immune to the feeling, but in a sense that it keeps our mind together, it keeps our emotion together, simply because we acknowledge the temporary nature of what we are going through. So when we talk about the station of Shawq, this verse is quite beautiful. There's another verse that we're all familiar with, the last verse of Surah Al-Kahf, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Whoever is hopeful, whoever longs for their meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then do the following. And that is, do good deeds, do righteous acts, and do not associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those acts. Of course, that's referring to both the major shirk, don't worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But more directly, it's referring to the lesser shirk. The lesser shirk meaning showing off. That when we do good deeds, we do it for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of anything else. So this verse is a little bit different than the verse we've been talking about, in a sense that here it's giving us the practical way of living this station of longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first verse that we began with is more talking about the psychological aspect of longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a dua, it is said that the Prophet ﷺ would make this dua, أسألك لذة النظر إلى وجهك والشوق إلى لقائك. I ask you for the pleasure of looking at you, looking at your face, as well as the longing. I ask you for the feeling of longing for my meeting with you. أسألك لذة النظر إلى وجهك والشوق إلى لقائك. So the Prophet ﷺ would acknowledge this aspect of spirituality, saying that we need to meet this feeling of longing for our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالشَّوْقْ أَثَرٌ مِنْ آثَارِ الْمَحَبَّةِ. Shawq, longing, is one of the fruits or the branches of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We long for something when we love that thing. Or else it makes no sense for us to long for something that we really could care less about. Does anyone feel the longing or the urge to be reacquainted with their obnoxious neighbor that they had way back when? Absolutely not. Does anyone long to be reunited with that toxic boss that they had to deal with for however long? Absolutely not. Why? Because, well, we don't like these people. We don't like them, and therefore we won't care to see them again. In fact, we might be making dua, oh Allah, I don't want to see that person ever again, the exact opposite. But when we love someone or something, whether that's our village, whether that's our country, whether that's our hometown where we grew up, whether that's people we had close relationships with, when we were younger or previously, all of this longing and wanting to be reunited and reacquainted with these things is an extension of our love for these things. Now, shawq is more than just missing something. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's more than just sitting, man, I really miss those days, I really miss my hometown. It's more than that. But rather, shawq is the missing element as well as a practical element, in a sense that I miss it, and therefore I'm going to reunite myself with it. I'm going to go and visit my hometown. I'm going to go and visit my childhood friends. I'm going to go or call them or something. And again, the example of our children is always the best example. If your children are living out of your home, especially if they're in another state, we miss them. And so every so often we say, hey, I'm going to come by and spend a weekend with you all, or I'm going to spend a week with you all. That's shawq. I miss you, and now I'm going to actually come and see you. That is shawq. فإنه سفر القلب إلى المحبوب في كل حال. Now, longing, again, is actually pursuing that which we miss. But in a station of spirituality, it can be more than just going and visiting that which we love. It can also be with the heart. Not physically, necessarily, but also with the heart. In a sense that when we apply this station to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously we cannot pack our bags and book a flight to Jannah. If that was the case, none of us would be here. But rather, when it comes to missing Allah or longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so long as we remain in this life, that traveling and that pursuing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be with the heart. But why do we pursue it? It's because we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we pursue it. And the more we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be with Him in every moment and every phase of our lives. So loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every believer loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for that reason, they say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But the more a person loves Allah, the more they live by it. And for some people, that will come in kind of on and off. I sometimes go to Jummah prayer for men, and I sometimes don't go to Jummah prayer. I sometimes pray my 5 daily prayers. I sometimes don't. And this person is I sometimes love Allah, I sometimes love Him less. Other people, they're more consistent. I pray my 5 daily prayers. I go to every Jummah prayer. I fast my Ramadan. I'm giving my zakat. I'm doing the bare minimum. So this person has an amount of love, but that love is very minimal. Other people will increase, and the more they love Allah, the more they increase. All of this are expressions of longing. And so what this station will come and do is not only give us a little bit more of a solid vision that why am I doing these things? A lot of people, they do it without reflecting much as to why they're doing it. Or if they think about why they're doing it, it really does not go beyond, well, I don't want to be punished in the day of judgment. That's it. Or I become accustomed to doing these things. What Shawq is going to come and do for us is to say, no, you do these things because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because you love Allah, your heart wants to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why you pray. That's why you fast. That's why you give charity. You want to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then on top of that, it will help create consistency in our actions and really give life to our actions. Because as we've gone over before, one of the greatest challenges of spirituality is when these things become dull and stale. We no longer feel that spiritual high, that spiritual excitement. I'm no longer thrilled about going to an Islamic talk. I'm no longer thrilled about making dua. It's become stale. And this is a major spiritual challenge. What Shawq does is it keeps it alive. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it nourished. Why? Because it keeps refreshing that thing we have yet to enjoy. And that is paradise. Now, we as human beings, we're wired in a way where we like that which is new. I want to experience something new. That's why traveling is so attractive to people, because you're experiencing new things. But think about it. Is it exciting to go from, let's say, from where we are to whatever city in America that literally is the same exact thing? It has the same exact places, same exact restaurants, same exact attractions, same exact recreational activities. It's literally the same. Is that interesting at all? No, well, I could do that here. But if you say, man, there's landscape you've never seen before, there are restaurants there you've never seen before, there are activities you've never done before, oh, that sounds really interesting. So we have this attraction towards that which is new. Now, none of us have experienced paradise. And so what Shawq will come and do and say is, look, you've never seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine the excitement that you will feel then. You've never been to paradise and all the things that you can do over there. You haven't experienced this yet. But in order to get there, you need to save up. And you save up with good deeds. Just like, man, my dream vacation is to go to the Maldives, for example. My dream vacation is to rent one of those hotel rooms or those rooms that are right on that crystal clear water and whatnot. What am I going to do? I'm going to save up. From now, it might take me years because those things are like $10,000 a night. It's incredibly expensive. I'm going to save up so that I can go there. Now, as we save up and we look at our bank account, we don't really regret that. We're not sitting there thinking, oh, what am I doing with this money? Why is it there? It's not benefiting me. No, we have a goal. Oh, I'm getting there closer. Oh, I'm almost there. A little bit more. No, I need to keep myself disciplined in how I spend so that I can save enough money, so that eventually I can go and do these things. Right? That's a type of ambition that is driven by longing. Now take that example and apply it on our good deeds. Apply it on our religion. When we consider the afterlife and the pleasure of being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeing Allah, being in paradise, then that is flavor, and that is flavor to our good deeds, and it keeps our good deeds fresh and alive. It prevents it from falling into staleness, and we're constantly pursuing this trip to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the highest thing, right? Shawq isn't higher than loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, simply because Shawq is a branch or an extension of love. Love is the essence, it's the source. We cannot long for Allah unless we love Him. It's not the opposite. Right? Now, Yahya ibn Mu'adh gives us another benefit of Shawq. And he says, عَلَامَةُ الشَّوْقِ فِطَامُ الْجَوَارِحِ عَنِ الشَّهَوَاتِ. He says the sign that someone loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone longs for Allah, the sign that someone is longing for Allah is when our body stays away from our desires. Our body stays away from desires. What does this mean? Now, desires here, of course, it includes forbidden desires, but it also includes permissible desires. And so when a person longs for Allah, it will discipline the person's behavior to where their behaviors are always in line with that which brings them closer to what they long for, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They won't be distracted by just eating and recreation and entertainment and just let's chill and relax. Their body simply does not enjoy those things anymore. Why? Because they long for something greater. And doing these things simply don't satisfy that longing. It doesn't cool the flames of the longing. But rather, when they pray, when they read Quran, when they do good deeds, when they do something that brings them closer to Allah, that's when they feel relaxed. That's when they feel at ease. So the sign that someone truly longs for Allah is when their body stays away from actions or does not enjoy actions that don't bring them closer to Allah. Abu Uthman gives us another explanation about Shawq. He says, عَلَامَتُهُ حُبُّ الْمَوْتِ مع الراحة والعافية كحال يوسف لما ألقي في الجب لم يقل توفني ولما أدخل السجن لم يقل توفني ولما تم له الأمر والأمن والنعمة قال توفني مسلما. Abu Uthman gives something very interesting. He says, the sign of longing for Allah is loving death. Is loving death. It doesn't mean I want to die. It means I love that which comes after death. I want this life to end, again, not in a suicidal way, it's not being said out of depression and out of disparity. It's being said out of excitement for what comes after life, and that is their meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, what happens often is that when someone is going through a harsh difficulty, death becomes easy upon them. Meaning, when someone is going through misery, when they're miserable, it's easy to say, oh, Allah, just take me out, I don't want this anymore. That's not shawq. That's kind of depression. That's patience running out. But rather, shawq is loving death when the person is in a state of comfort, relaxation, and ease. Like Yusuf alayhi salam. When Yusuf was thrown into the well and left to die, he did not say, oh Allah, cause death to come upon me. And when he was falsely put in prison, he didn't say, oh Allah, take my soul, I'm done with this. But rather, when he reached his pinnacle, or at least when the story reached its pinnacle, when he was reunited with his family, when he was the Aziz, in a high position of stability and authority, when he had it all, that is when he said, Tawaffani Muslima. Oh Allah, allow my death to be in a state of submission to you. Why? Because he was longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wasn't distracted by what he has acquired, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. He wasn't distracted by his authority, his luxury, his comfort, his prestige. He wasn't distracted by that. Rather, he said, "Oh Allah, my sight, my heart is set on meeting you. So allow me to die in a state of submission to you." That is true longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are three levels of longing. وهو على ثلاث درجات. الدرجة الأولى شوق العابد إلى الجنة ليأمن الخائف ويفرح الحزين ويظفر الآمل. So the first level of shawq is the shawq often experienced by the worshipper of Allah who is pursuing paradise. So when a person worships Allah, most Muslims do it in pursuit of paradise or out of fear of hellfire, which is a type of pursuit for paradise. Now, the fruits of this shawq is threefold. The first is لِيَأْمَنِ الْخَائِفِ. When a person is afraid, they feel safety. In other words, when you feel fear in life and you remember paradise and you remember that you are living life with the goal of reaching paradise, it brings an amount of safety a feeling of safety to the person. When a person is afraid, they're fearful of their life. I'm not talking about someone has a gun to the person's head. I'm talking about they're going through life difficulties that bring them an amount of insecurity, uncertainty, which inspires or arouses fear in their heart. When we think of paradise, it brings a feeling of safety to our hearts and to our minds. Now also what this is doing is it's keeping a balance. It's keeping a balance here. Feeling too safe is a sign of spiritual depravity. But also feeling too afraid is a sign of spiritual depravity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizes those who have yes of Him, who despair from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and do not despair from Allah's mercy. The ones who despair from His mercy are the disbelievers. So this is a type of extreme. The other is when we feel too safe. That, I'll do whatever I want. Allah's not going to hold me accountable, or Allah's going to overlook all these things. As Allah says, أَفَأَمِنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ. Do they feel safe from the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? فَلَا يَأْمَنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمَ الْخَاسِرُونَ. And then Allah says, none feel safe from the plan of Allah except the losers. So what's being done here, shawq helps keep this balance. That when I feel fear, safety comes to kind of keep it in the moderate range. I don't feel too afraid to where I despair. But the fact that we feel afraid helps keep the other side in balance as well, where we don't feel immune to everything. We don't feel immune and excused by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, لِيَأْمَنْ الْخَائِفِ وَيَفْرَحْ الْحَزِينَ. And here the second fruit also has this double aspect here. And it brings joy to the one who feels sad. So sorrow and joy are opposites. These two now balance each other out. But when a person feels sad, I lost this, my life isn't too great, I'm going through all these difficulties, this or that, and it brings them an amount of sorrow and grief, longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, longing for paradise comes and brings happiness, or brings a type of joy to the person. Again, as I was explaining earlier, if someone lost their job, for example, may Allah protect us, they lost their job and now they're going through financial difficulty, they feel afraid, they feel grief as a result of what they're going through, they think of paradise, and that what they are enduring now and being patient for, they're being rewarded for that. That brings an amount of happiness. Why? An amount of joy. Why? Because, I'm going to enjoy this later on. This isn't in vain. This isn't without purpose. There's purpose here. And that purpose is to increase my ranks on the Day of Judgment, to increase my ranks in paradise. This is a type of enthusiasm none experience except the believers. And thus, the Prophet ﷺ says, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلُّهُ خَيْرٌ فإن شك فإن أصابته ضراء فصبر كان خيرا له وإن أصابته سراء فشكر كان خيرا له. The Prophet ﷺ says in this well-known hadith, the affairs of the believer is truly amazing, and this is only for the believer. If they go through a hardship and they're patient, that's better for them. And if they're going through ease and comfort and they are grateful, that is better for them. And that is only for the believer. And so Shawq plays an integral role in that part. It keeps our emotions, our mindset balanced. It keeps it balanced. And it keeps us in a feeling of safety as well as in a feeling an amount of joy. وَيَظْفَرْ الْآمِلِ. And it brings success to the one who is hopeful. Right? And it brings longing brings a feeling of success to the one who is hopeful. Now, what is being said here, what is meant here is the following. When we are hopeful for something, that hope needs to be revitalized every now and then in order to stay alive. Or else, if I'm hopeful for something to happen and too much time passes without it happening, what happens to the hope? It dies out. It's a fact of the matter. It dies out. And so something similar can happen to one's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person begins their journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala feeling excited, feeling motivated, feeling ambitious, and they're worshiping Allah, they're doing good deeds, they're doing extra good deeds, and time passes by, the person, if they don't see an amount of fruit for what they are aspiring towards, then the aspiration can die out. And again, we've spoken about this before, and it's a major spiritual challenge. What I've termed, or what I've called before, the relapse. After several years of practicing, the person starts to relapse and remember the things they used to do before before becoming religiously committed. Oh, I used to do this. I wish I did that more. I wish I could go back and do that more. What is really going on here? The person's motivation is dying out. Their hope in Allah is dying out because they don't see the fruits, or they don't see the fruits of their behaviors. They're not seeing it, or they're not seeing it enough. Right? And so this is what perhaps is meant here. وَيَظْفَرْ الْآمِلِ. When we long for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it prevents that from happening. Why? Because, as I mentioned, this longing for Allah keeps our iman fresh. It keeps it alive and revitalized. It keeps rejuvenating our iman, simply because we are constantly reacquainting ourselves with our goal and our pursuit, what we are really doing. And that is trying to make it to paradise. Now, Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayh says that الشوق إلى الله لا ينافي الشوق إلى الجنة. Longing for Allah does not contradict longing for paradise. So what Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayh is about to point out here is the following. Abu Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala says that the first level of shawq is longing for paradise, as though that contradicts longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens in tasawwuf very often, or in tazkiyah very often, is that pursuing paradise is perceived and portrayed as being lesser than pursuing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone who does something for paradise, that's good, but someone who does something for the sake of Allah, out of love of Allah, because He's perfect, that's higher. Ibn Qayyim and his teacher Ibn Taymiyyah really, they disagree with this. They say there is no contradiction here. Longing for paradise is not lesser, nor is it contradictory to longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because why? Longing for paradise is part of longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens is the following. Paradise is perceived as a place where we engage our desires. We engage ourselves. That's what's really going on in paradise. I do what my body, my mind, my heart desires. That's paradise. Whereas engaging Allah in the afterlife, that's beyond paradise. And that's simply not a correct and accurate definition of paradise. Seeing Allah, speaking to Allah, being in the presence of Allah is part of paradise. That is the essence of paradise. The rest, the bodily engagements of paradise, is an extension of this type of paradise. And so the person who seeks paradise, by default, is seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By default. They're not two different things. As Ibn Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi says here, the most joyful things in paradise is being near to Allah, seeing Allah, hearing Him, hearing that He's pleased with us. And it's not simply to eat and drink. Eating and drinking is part of paradise, but it's not the only things in paradise. Being with Allah is part of paradise as well. Now, longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is similar to what we spoke about in terms of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a longing for Allah that is fueled by Allah's ihsan towards us, meaning Allah's kindness towards us. This fuels our longing for Allah. Because Allah is kind to me, I long for Him. Similarly, in our own interactions, if someone's really kind to you, from a father or a mother or an aunt or an uncle or someone who is older than you in age, they used to bring you gifts, used to bring you candy when you're a young one, you'll feel this type of longing to see that person. Why? Because of their kindness towards you. The other type of longing is longing for Allah because of His beauty and His perfection, because of who He is subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we spoke about this in the station of mahabba, of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a sense that our love for Allah can be fueled by one of two things. One is loving Him because of His kindness towards us, and the other, the higher one, is loving Him because of His perfection. So you have something similar here. Now, it's important to realize that spirituality is very complex. Our hearts are very complex. It's not black and white in our hearts. Sometimes I might love Allah because of His kindness towards me. And in other moments, I might love Allah because of Him, because of His perfection, His beauty. And so you have this going on. Both are at play oftentimes. And so what's important to acknowledge that both are part of Iman. Oops, I skipped the second level. الدرجة الثانية شوق إلى الله عز وجل زرعه الحب الذي ينبت على حافات المنن فعلق قلبه بصفاته المقدسة فاشتاق إلى معاينة لطائف كرمه وآيات بره وأعلام فضله وهذا شوق تغشاه المبار وتخالجه المسار ويقاومه الاصطبار. So I'm sorry, the last few things I said are part of the second level. I kind of missed it here because it's at the bottom of the page. And so what this second level is longing for Allah Himself. And I explained how longing for paradise and longing for Allah, they're not contradictory. And now I'm getting into the other parts of this level, and that is, what is the seed of this longing for Allah? Right? The seed of the second level is building this longing for Allah through looking at His kindness towards us. So as I was talking about, longing for Allah has two parts. One is because of His kindness towards us, and the other is because of His perfection subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need both. Abu Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala is saying that longing for Allah requires both. We need to better acquaint with ourselves with Allah's ihsan towards us, His kindness towards us. Likewise, we need to better acquaint ourselves with who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, His perfection, His beauty. Why? Because we as human beings, we gravitate towards the ones who are kind to us and the ones who are perfect. It's a natural gravitation that we have in our hearts and our minds. So the more we acquaint ourselves with these two things in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more it builds this love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the stronger that love for Allah is, the stronger our shawq for Him will be. The stronger our longing for Him will become bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, he goes on in the second station to say things that, are true, but I don't think they're very necessary. So I'll just go over them real quickly. Basically, when he says that our love of Allah are built on these two things that I just mentioned, then by extension, our longing for Allah becomes based on these two things. And he says that these two roots of longing for Allah are really firm. They're firm and they're well rooted and they're strong, and they help keep us on the path. We as human beings, we're always ambitious for more. We always want more. And so the more we see and acknowledge Allah's excellence towards us and our kindness towards us, the more we will want more from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Simple, basic human psychology. If I ask Allah for something, I make dua and I say, oh Allah, I ask you for this, and Allah gives me it. Now, our reaction will be, oh my God, Allah gave me what I asked for. Oh Allah, I need X, Y, Z, and this and that. We ask for more. It's very basic human psychology. Children do this with their parents. I'll ask for this. They give it to me. Okay, I'm going to ask for some more things. And so the more we engage Allah's kindness towards us, and the more we get to know Allah's perfection, the more we seek from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this better roots our iman and our love for Allah and our longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, at the second level, there are still some imperfections when it comes to our seeking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because our longing for Allah is partially built on what Allah gives us, Abu Ismail considers this kind of, there's still something imperfect here when it comes to the person's relationship with Allah. Why? Because it's as though part of my relationship with Allah, part of my longing for Allah, part of my love for Allah is conditional to what Allah gives me. And because He is giving me, now it means that I'm still attached to myself. There is an amount of attachment I have to myself. If Allah satisfies me, I will love Him more. Now, is this love built on love for Allah or really love for the self? If Allah satisfies me, I will love Him. That's very different than, oh Allah, I love you for who you are. Does that make sense? So this is how Abu Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala is looking at it. And he's also mentions that this shawq can descend. The strength of it can descend because this shawq requires patience patience in waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer my dua, to be kind to me. When we make dua, Allah doesn't answer it immediately every single time. And so when we make dua, there is an amount of patience that is required in order for our dua to be answered. And sometimes that might take a really long time. So if a person's longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is built on or based on Allah's kindness to me, that this is a longing that is really mixed with patience. I have to be patient as I long for Allah. I have to be patient as I wait for Allah to answer me and give me what I need. that will make me long for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if it takes too long, my patience dies out, and therefore my longing for Allah dies out. So essentially what's happening here is that patience, the station of patience and the station of shawq are intertwined here. The more patient I am, the more I long for Allah. But the weaker my patience is, the weaker my longing for Allah is. And Abu Ismail in his conception here is saying that there's still some work to be done. If a person, if their longing for Allah is built entirely on their love for who Allah is, then it's disconnected from patience. Allah is always perfect, and therefore my longing for Allah will always be high because Allah is always perfect. Okay. Is that clear? Okay. Now again, this is complicated stuff, but what we can take from here is the following. In order to keep our iman revitalized, rejuvenated, full of life, we need to have this longing for Allah. And the longing for Allah needs to be built on something that is practical. Right? We cannot live our iman just on abstract thoughts, just on kind of, you just have to believe. Muslims don't buy this. We don't play this game of you just have to believe. Muslims want something practical, and they want the evidence. And what's the practicality here is we need to better acquaint ourselves with how Allah is excellent towards us, as well as who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, His perfection. And then the third level, الدرجة الثالثة نار أضرمها صفو المحبة صفو المحبة فنغصت العيش وسلبت أو سلبت السلوى ولم sorry, these are really strange words. ولم يهنها معزا دون اللقاء. Here, Abu Ismail rahimahullah ta'ala is saying that in the third level, the longing for Allah becomes so powerful, it's really overpowering to the extent that it feels like a fire. It feels like a fire in the heart. When you really, really, really miss someone, how does it feel? It becomes painful. When you really long for someone, it feels painful. And where is this feeling coming from? It's coming from pure love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, if someone, like for example, my grandma, she's in her 80s, and my grandfather, her husband, passed away about 10 years ago. Actually, a little bit more than 10 years ago. And, you know, this is a man she's lived with for decades. They raised, how many, 11 children, I forgot. And they were always together. Always together. He passed away. Now every single time she talks about him, she cries. And just cries and cries and cries. Hey, where's that coming from? It's coming from pure love. Pure love. And yes, she feels pain, but that pain isn't coming from a negative place. It's coming from that pure love. Contrary to, you know, other grandmas or other elderly ladies I've sat with and heard from who may never speak of their husband, or when they speak and mention their husband, they mention them in a negative way. You see two very different things here. And so when longing for Allah, or I should say when the love of Allah becomes so powerful, it begins to hurt, simply because there's no way to really satisfy that longing for Allah. If you really miss someone, you really long for someone who's still alive, you have the option of going and visiting that person, seeing them, satisfying it. And so although you might not have the ability to go right now, the fact that you know you can go soon helps to, you know, manage that feeling of longing. But when it comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only way we can meet Him is when we pass away. But that's not in our hands. That's not in our hands. And so what ends up happening is this life becomes the barrier between me and my love. this life becomes the barrier between me and cooling down or cooling off this fire, putting it out. I cannot make it. I cannot see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore I cannot satisfy my longing. I cannot cool it down simply because of this thing called life. And the end of life is simply not in my hand. It's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the more a person loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for who He is, for His perfection, for His beauty, the purer the love is, and the purer the love is, the stronger the shawq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be, which will result in this pain, the feeling of pain. And that feeling of pain will cause life to become unsatisfying, underwhelming, a barrier between me and where I want to be. It becomes my prison. As the Prophet ﷺ says, this life is the prison of believers, and paradise is the freedom of believers. And so nothing remains entertaining, nothing remains a source of comfort. There's nothing interesting in this life. Now, we need to be very careful here. Why? Because I've come across people who feel this way, but it's not coming from this pure love. It's coming from an amount of disparity and depression. So we need to be very careful here. Spirituality is a complex and fragile thing. And what happens quite often is that people might speak or say things that from a spiritual lens are very, very deep and spiritual, or seemingly deep and spiritual. However, when you analyze the person and their background and where they're coming from and what they've experienced, you realize that it's actually coming from something else. And this is why Abu Ismail makes it a point to say that the shawq is only valuable when a person is in a state of comfort and ease. When they're comfortable and they're going through ease. Why? Because this life is attractive. This life is comfortable. You don't want to leave it. And so when someone says, I want to be with Allah, I seek that which is after death, despite the comfort that they have, that is a clearer longing of Allah than someone whose life is miserable, whose life has nothing, there are no goals, everything seems bleak and depressing, and they say, oh Allah, I want to be with you. Right? So one is coming from an amount of disparity in life, whereas the other one is coming from shawq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, real shawq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this person will never, their fire will never be put out, it will never be extinguished until they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so with that concludes the last and final station that we will take, al-shawq ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we have a few more lessons left that I think are important, and it really revolves around happiness in life and the concept of joy and happiness, which is something that the Western world we here in the West, we really fail at understanding properly. And so I want to go over that, but to conclude these stations, I really want to emphasize the three main points, I think, of all that we've gone through that is really summarized here. Summarized in these last few moments that we've had in this station. And that is, number one, the importance of seeking the afterlife. Abu Ismail concludes these stations by saying, لأنه لا يكفها دون لقاء من يحب قرار. That we will never be satisfied. We will never feel full joy, full happiness. We will never feel whole and complete until we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I was in Jordan, and I think about my time in Jordan and I try and analyze society. What society needs in the Middle East, generally speaking, is the reinforcement of Tawheed. Because in the East, in the Middle East, as we know, a lot of forms of shirk creep into society. Right? And so they're in need of reinforcing tawheed. But generally speaking, at least my experience with Jordanian society is that the afterlife is on their minds. It's on their minds. You hear about the afterlife in regular conversations. Right? People consider the afterlife. How much of an impact it has on them, that's a different question. But there's clearly a consideration for the afterlife when it comes to Jordanian society. Now, here in America, we have something different going on. You don't really notice forms of shirk creeping into Muslim American society. And that's not because of stronger iman or greater sophistication per se, but because Western society shies away and looks down upon what's the word, like superstitious things. What do you mean go to this grave and you get blessings if you go? We don't believe in this stuff as Westerners. We believe in that which is tangible. And so, although I talk about Tawheed every so often, Muslims here in America believe in one God. They don't. It's rare to find someone who engages in these things, except maybe in private circles. Where the American Muslim population is weak is when it comes to the afterlife. People are not concerned with the afterlife. People are concerned with their careers, with their investments, with their bank accounts, with becoming a lawyer or a doctor or X or Y or Z. Where am I going to put my kids to school? Where am I going to send them to college? Where am I going to do this? Where should I buy a home? And this and that. It's all about this life. How often do you hear the afterlife mentioned in our conversations here in America? I'm talking about in our own social gatherings. Not very often. In fact, rarely do you hear it. I'm not saying they're bad Muslims. I'm just saying this is a part of our American Muslim experience that is weak. And so I very often talk about the afterlife. It's drastically important because if we don't pursue an afterlife, then what's the point of religion? And the more a person is concerned for their afterlife, the more they're going to take religion seriously. It's a very simple equation. It's a very simple correlation. So this is one thing we have to take from all of these stations that we've gone over. These, mashallah, about 1,000 pages we've gone over so far. The afterlife is a crucial part of our relationship with Allah. If you want a relationship with Allah, take the afterlife seriously. If you want to improve your iman, strengthen your iman, reinforce your iman, counsel yourself, whether emotionally or psychologically, counsel yourself. If you want to be healthy, take the afterlife seriously. The second main point we take from all of these stations, again, which was mentioned here in the station of Shawq, is the importance of observing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives. Atheism, I've talked to youth about atheism, and I've shown them, and I think they agree with me. This atheism and the atheistic movement is not the result of scientific research. It's not the result of the scientific revolution. It's not the result of technological advancements. It's not. Atheism is the result of a disconnect between the human being and Allah. A disconnect between the person and Allah. If I don't feel Allah in my life, then why should I worship Him? In fact, if I don't feel Allah in my life, why should I say He exists in the first place? And so many people will say, God, where are you? Where are you? And it's truly a shame, because when they look up and say, God, where are you? They're looking at the sky and they see the sun or the moon or the stars and the clouds and all of this, which are all signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all manifestations of Allah's names and attributes. So it's really kind of ironic. You're asking God where He is, and you're literally looking at things that manifest or that show who He is, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is there. And so we need to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by learning to observe Him in the world around us, especially in seeing how He relates to us, how He engages us as individuals. And this is through His ihsan, His excellence towards us. When Allah answered my dua, when He helped me out of this difficulty, when He guided me to the correct decision here, when I prayed istikhara and He helped me make the better decision, and all of that. So number 2 is learning to observe Allah's presence in our lives. And last but definitely not least is learning more about who Allah is. The scholars gave a lot of attention to Allah's names and His attributes. There's a reason for that. It is because the more we know who He is, the more we love Him. And all 3 of these things that I just mentioned, our love for Allah are built on them. And so if the goal of Madarij al-Salikin, this book that we've been going through for nearly 3 years now, alhamdulillah, the entire goal is to love Allah. I can summarize that for you, and inshallah it's a good summary in those 3 points that I just mentioned. Strengthen your connection to the afterlife, and you will learn to love Allah. Improve your observation, or learn to observe Allah in your life, and learn about who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. This is spirituality. Right there. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. We'll continue bidhnillahi ta'ala next time. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept what we've done so far. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.